What if, suddenly, someone told you that there was a vision capable of revealing not only the future of humanity, but also the destiny of your own soul? A revelation that comes not from politicians, scientists, or world leaders, but from a maternal and heavenly presence, Mary, the mother of Jesus, speaking to hearts through her visionaries. Have you ever stopped to think what you would do if you received a direct warning from heaven about approaching days of darkness? And what's more, if this warning were accompanied by an urgent call for a spiritual awakening? In Medjugorje, small village that has become known worldwide, stories like these aren't legends, they're living testimonies. Their simple people claim to have seen and heard Mary bringing profound messages, full of warnings and hope. Messages that speak of difficult times, of spiritual trials, but also of a transformation that can change the course of history. What you're about to discover may surprise you. Imagine the scenario: the world plunged into a darkness that represents not only the absence of light, but also the loss of values, cold relationships, and indifference to faith. This is the night Mary described to her visionaries. But along with this dark vision, she also revealed a glimmer of hope. A spiritual awakening that will emerge precisely in the most challenging moments. Stay with me until the end, because this story can speak directly to you. Have you ever experienced days when it seemed like there was no way out? When your heart feels heavy, your soul weary, and your faith almost fades? The messages of Medjugorje show that we are not alone in these times. Mary speaks like a mother who warns her children before the storm, not to frighten them, but to prepare them. She reminds them that, even in the darkest times, there is a path of light that begins in the silence of prayer, in reconciliation with God, and in the decision to live with more love and purpose. Many may ignore them, others doubt them. But those who listen carefully realize that these revelations carry something beyond mere words. They touch a deep point in the soul, as if awakening forgotten memories that we were made for something greater. And it is precisely there that the mystery becomes more intense. Not everything has been revealed. Some of these messages remain secret, waiting for the right moment to come to light. Think about it. What could be so important that it would be kept hidden for decades? Why haven't certain words been spoken to the world yet? Seers speak of events that precede a great change, signs that few will recognize, but which will be clear to those who are already alert and prepared. It's as if each detail were a piece of a divine puzzle that, when completed, will reveal a picture few can imagine. These visions aren't just about the distant tomorrow, they carry an urgency for the present. It's as if Mary is telling us, the time to change is today. And if you've made it this far, perhaps it's no coincidence. Perhaps there's something in this message that your heart needs to hear right now. Now I want to take you deeper into this mystery, because understanding what was shown in Medjugorje is not just a matter of curiosity. It is a preparation for something much greater that is to come. And as we journey through this story together, I want to ask you for something that goes far beyond a simple gesture on the screen. If, in any way, what I'm sharing here touched you, if it awakened memories, feelings, or even that good restlessness of someone beginning to see something bigger, leave here in the comments what spoke most to your heart. It could be a personal experience, a reflection, or even a question you carry, because when you share, it's not just your voice that resonates. It's an entire community that begins to grow stronger. You know, your participation here is what keeps this space alive. Every like, every comment, and every new subscription to the channel helps this message reach others who might need this exact message today. This is how reach grows, how content gains traction, and how stories like this don't remain hidden, but spread like light in the darkness. So, if this topic resonates with you, if your heart felt this conversation is important, like this video, and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving messages like this. Here, each interaction of yours is like another thread in this web of faith and hope that we are weaving together. And now, let's move on, because there is still much more to be revealed about what Mary showed in her visions. And perhaps, the next part is exactly the one that will change the way you see all of this. When we speak of Mary's messages in Medjugorje, we are not referring to something distant or nebulous, lost in some corner of history. We are talking about real people who walk among us, whose faces, stories, and hearts are marked by experiences that forever transformed their lives. The visionaries of Medjugorje were not prestigious figures or influential leaders. They were ordinary young people with simple routines who suddenly found themselves faced with something that surpassed any logic or human explanation. It all began on June 24, 1981. 6 young people, Evanka, Marija, Mirjana, Vika, and Jakov, claimed to have seen a luminous figure atop a hill, radiating peace but also carrying a gaze that seemed to pierce their souls. They described the presence as a woman of indescribable beauty, clothed in light, who introduced herself as Mary, the mother of Jesus. At first, fear and doubt tried to take over, but something in their hearts told them this was no illusion or coincidence. It was a calling. Over the years, these encounters were repeated, and each of the visionaries began to receive personal and collective messages that spoke of conversion, prayer, and preparation for the times to come. They report that Mary spoke not only about faith, but also about practical decisions, life choices, and attitudes that shape how we face challenges. It's curious to note how, despite such profound experiences, the visionaries always conveyed their words with simplicity. Without complex theological discourse or inaccessible terms, the impact of these revelations was so great that even decades later, millions of people around the world continue to seek Medjugorje, whether physically, by making a pilgrimage there, or spiritually, connecting with the messages that came from that place. Some go to pray for a miracle, some in search of inner peace, and even some to try to prove that it's all just a fabrication. But the fact is that, regardless of intention, almost everyone returns somehow different. What's most striking is that these seers didn't present themselves as saints or perfect. On the contrary, they always made it clear that they too faced doubts, internal struggles, and difficulties. It's this humanity that makes their stories so relatable. They don't live isolated from the world they married, had children, and worked. But at the same time, they carry the responsibility of keeping secrets and conveying messages that, according to them, have the power to change the destiny of many souls. Each of the 6 received a portion of these revelations. Some received all 10 secrets, which, according to them, speak of future events that will affect all of humanity. Others are still in the process of receiving them. It's as if each piece of this truth is in different hands, waiting for the exact moment to be revealed. And here comes a detail that piques everyone's curiosity. None of them can reveal information about these secrets without Mary's permission. There is strict control over the timing and manner in which these messages will reach the world. Over the years, scholars, journalists, and even church authorities have investigated these accounts. Some maintain a cautious stance, awaiting further evidence, while others acknowledge that there's something there that defies common explanation. The fact is that, regardless of the official stance, the messages continue to spread and touch lives, whether through their spiritual content or simply by awakening in people the need to reflect on the meaning of their own journey. These stories survived not only because of the faith of those who believed, but also because of the strength of those who witnessed and remained steadfast, even in the face of criticism and distrust. Consider the weight of carrying something so great, knowing that there will be those who doubt, mock, or even try to undermine the credibility of what you saw. It's at this point that it becomes clear that we're not just talking about faith, but also about courage, perseverance, and a conviction that stands the test of time. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding who these visionaries are opens the door to understanding what truly lies behind the messages they received. It's realizing that these aren't just apparitions, but a call to inner and collective transformation. It's about the mindset we choose to adopt in life, the silent decisions that shape our future, and the hidden truth that, when revealed, can completely change the way we see the world. And before you go, tell me, does this make sense to you? Comment. I'm on this journey to. When the Medjugorje visionaries speak of days of darkness, it's easy to imagine something like a global blackout or an extreme natural phenomenon. But listening carefully to their accounts, we realize that the darkness they foretell goes far beyond what meets the eye. It's not just the absence of physical light, but a time when the human soul will be tested, when faith will be tested like never before, and when hearts will be revealed for what they truly carry. It's a shadow that advances silently, not due to the force of a storm, but due to the fragility of convictions and the weakening of the values that sustain life. This darkness, they say, doesn't arrive suddenly, like a door that closes in an instant. It approaches little by little, like dusk that drags on until the sun disappears. It begins with small concessions, with the gradual loss of the sense of the sacred, with the replacement of truth by comfortable versions of lies. It's a process invisible to those who are not spiritually awake, but evident to those who have learned to discern the signs of the times. Mary warned that during this period, many will feel confused and disoriented, as if their inner compass has lost its bearings. There will be an increase in indifference to the suffering of others, a weakening of family relationships, and an ever-increasing thirst for power and immediate pleasure. It is in this scenario that true faith will be put to the test. It won't just be about attending church or saying prayers, but about living what you believe, even when the cost is high. Darkness also carries an aspect of inner isolation. Many, even when surrounded by people, will feel a profound loneliness, as if the world were speaking a strange language and the soul could no longer find a resting place. It is at this point that the spiritual test becomes most intense. Trusting in God when everything around screams that it's not worth it. Standing firm when everyone else seems to give in. Choosing the truth, even if it hurts, instead of embracing a comfortable lie. The most impressive thing is that, according to the Seers, this test will not be imposed solely by external forces. It will begin within each of us, in the silent battle between what we want and what we know is right, between the fear of loss and the courage to remain faithful. It is in this internal struggle that what has truly been built in our hearts over the years will be revealed. And if this description seems distant or exaggerated, just look around. How often do we see attitudes that would once have been unthinkable become commonplace? How often do we feel that compassion is becoming rare, that the committed word has lost value, and that faith, for many, has become merely a decorative element in a world that runs aimlessly? It's as if this shadow is already casting its first signs, and the spiritual test is approaching with silent steps. But paradoxically, it is precisely in this scenario that Mary points to the possibility of an awakening. Darkness comes not to destroy, but to reveal. It is in the absence of light that we learn to value every flame lit, every gesture of kindness, every prayer offered with sincerity. Spiritual testing, however harsh it may seem, is also an opportunity to rediscover the essence of faith, the kind that does not depend on applause or approval, but remains steadfast even in silence. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding the true meaning of this darkness also means understanding the strategies for navigating it without losing your way, and even transforming it into a time of growth and purification. It's about how our daily decisions shape how we face this period and how small choices can mean the difference between succumbing or remaining standing. Comment there. That makes sense to me. According to the messages of Medjugorje, the approaching dark period is not an end to history, but an urgent call for a new beginning. It is curious to note how, amid the threat and weight of darkness, there is a silent promise of renewal. Mary, according to the visionaries, speaks of a time when, just when all seems lost, God will begin to awaken hearts that have long been dormant. It is not a noisy or spectacular awakening to the human eye, but a profound transformation, almost invisible to the senses, yet impossible for those who experience it to ignore. This spiritual awakening is not the privilege of a select few, but an open invitation. It manifests itself deep within, the moment a person realizes they need to reconnect with what is true, with what gives meaning to existence. It is as if, amidst the confusion, a point of light emerges, guiding one back to the path. Many describe it as a sudden clarity, an understanding that comes not from reason, but from something higher, purer, more certain. What's striking is that, in the Medjugorje revelations, this movement back to God doesn't just happen in religious communities or spiritually prepared environments. On the contrary, it can happen in the heart of someone who has lived 4 years away from faith, who has never entered a church, or who even rejected any idea of a spiritual life. It's as if, in the most unlikely moment, God finds an opening to speak in. When he speaks, the soul knows it's not hearing just any voice. Mary describes this process as a divine response to the human crisis. Darkness, in this context, plays an unexpected role. It exposes the void, shows the fragility of false securities, and forces each person to decide where to stand. Some, faced with this, may harden themselves, but many will feel they can no longer continue living the same way, and that is when awakening occurs. There are reports of people who, when faced with moments of profound suffering or loss, experience this transformation from the inside out, a kind of new life that begins not because circumstances have improved, but because something has changed in the way they see the world and themselves. This shift in mindset is an essential part of conversion. It's not just changing habits, but changing the way we interpret everything around us. Beginning to see with eyes that seek the truth, and not just what is convenient. It's interesting too. Note that this call doesn't come as an imposition. Mary, according to the visionaries, insists that God respects human freedom. He knocks at the door, but doesn't force entry. Spiritual awakening is always a choice, and perhaps that's why it's so powerful when it happens. It's a conscious decision to say yes to what was previously ignored or even rejected. This moment of conversion is not without struggle. The awakened person does not become, overnight, immune to challenges or temptations. On the contrary, trials often increase, as if life itself wants to test the steadfastness of this new stance. But the difference lies in the strength one finds to overcome these battles, a strength that comes not from oneself, but from the constant presence of God. The most beautiful thing about this narrative is understanding that spiritual awakening isn't just individual. When a person truly converts, it reverberates around them. Entire families begin to change, relationships are restored, communities gain new life. It's like lighting a candle in a dark room. It illuminates not only the one holding it, but everyone nearby. This is how, according to the messages, God intends to work in these days of darkness, awakening one heart at a time, until the light is stronger than the shadow. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding this awakening also means understanding how to prepare for it and how not to let the opportunity pass us by. It's about recognizing the signs that God is already knocking at the door and realizing that the greatest danger isn't the darkness itself, but ignoring the call it brings. Right there, I'm on this journey to one of the most intriguing things about the Medjugorje accounts is that not everything is conveyed in words. There are moments when Mary simply remains silent before the visionaries. And, far from being a void, this silence carries an almost palpable weight. It's as if each second of this silence were more eloquent than any speech. The visionaries describe that, on these occasions there is no discomfort, but rather a profound peace, accompanied by a subtle invitation to delve within oneself and hear something that can only be grasped in stillness. This silence is different from what we usually experience in everyday life. It's not the awkward silence between two people who don't know what to say, nor the forced silence after an argument. It's a living silence, one that seems to contain answers and revelations, but at the same time demands an active stance from the recipient, opening space within the heart for God to speak in a way that transcends sound. Perhaps that's why so many struggle with it. We're accustomed to seeking quick answers, clear and direct explanations, and this silence breaks the logic of haste. Mary, according to the visionaries, uses this resource to remind us of something essential. God's voice rarely manifests itself in noise, and at this point, silence becomes a pedagogical act. It forces us to slow down, to filter out internal and external noise, and to realize that spirituality is not just made of beautiful words or visible rituals, but of silent encounters that change our mindset and the way we see the world. It's as if she were saying, "Stop, breathe, listen. I'm not speaking, but He is." And here lies a hidden truth that many overlook. Silence can be more transformative than speech, because when there are no words to fill the space, we are forced to face what lies within us. It is in these moments that the most important decisions can arise. How often, in moments of stillness, do we remember something that needs to be corrected, feel an impulse to forgive, or experience sudden clarity about which path to follow? It is precisely in these moments that God acts, shaping our journey from the inside out. Seers report that, in these silent moments, they feel an understanding that comes not through reasoning, but as if imprinted directly on the soul. There is no mental discussion, no argument. It is as if the truth simply presents itself, and the only possible response is to accept it. And this kind of revelation is intimate, personal. Even if others were present, each person receives something different, suited to their own story and their moment in life. The power of this silence also lies in its contrast with the world we live in. Today, we are bombarded with constant information, opinions, and stimuli. Finding a moment of true stillness is almost a luxury, and perhaps that's why it's so spiritually valuable. Mary, by remaining silent, gives us a model to follow, creating intentional pauses, allowing the soul to breathe, and letting God's presence occupy the space that was previously saturated with worries. That this silence, in the context of revelation, is not the absence of a message, it is the message. It is an invitation for each person to be an active participant in the listening process, not just a passive recipient of information. It is the experience of placing oneself before God without the expectation of controlling the conversation, without wanting Him to say exactly what we want to hear, but allowing Him to speak what we truly need to hear, even if it is uncomfortable. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because understanding Mary's silence is also understanding why certain answers we seek do not arrive in the form we expect, and how learning to decode what heaven communicates to us without words can radically change the course of our spiritual life. Comment there. That makes sense to me. The accounts of the Medjugorje visionaries speak of something that arouses both fascination and apprehension: the existence of specific signs and events that, according to them, will precede profound changes in the world. These signs are not merely symbolic or spiritual. Some, according to their descriptions, will be visible and undeniable, capable of capturing the attention of even those who have never heard of the apparitions. The difference is that, for those spiritually awake, they will have a clear meaning, while for others, they may seem like mere coincidences or inexplicable phenomena. The first important point Mary would have emphasized is that these signs will not arise chaotically, as if heaven were acting without a plan. On the contrary, there is an order, an almost strategic sequence, in which each event serves as preparation for the next. It is as if time were a grand narrative, and we were about to enter the most decisive chapters, and here, it is not about predicting dates or creating panic, but about understanding that there is a meaning behind each movement, something that goes beyond our immediate vision. The visionaries speak, for example, of a great sign that will be left in Medjugorje, something permanent, visible, and indestructible, which will serve as proof that the apparitions were real. This sign cannot be touched or manipulated, and, according to them, it will be so impressive that no one will be able to deny its existence. But here comes a crucial detail. This sign will not be given to convince last-minute doubters, but rather, to confirm the faith of those who have already decided to believe. It is a milestone, not magic. Furthermore, there are mentions of events that will occur progressively in the world, such as spiritual and moral crises, changes in nature, and events that will defy human logic. None of this will happen in isolation. Each sign will have a role, whether as a warning or an opportunity for personal decision. This is why Maria emphasizes preparation. Recognizing the signs is important, but responding to them is even more essential. Another curious point is that, according to the visionaries, some of these events will be announced in advance. One of the visionaries, chosen for this mission, will be responsible for revealing to the world, a few days in advance, when and where a particular sign or event will occur. This revelation will not come by human impulse, but at the precise time determined by Mary. And here, again, we see divine logic. It's not about creating fear, but about giving people one last chance to take a stand. There's also a symbolic aspect to these signs. Some won't manifest physically, but rather within people's sudden shifts in consciousness, concerns that can't be explained rationally, dreams and experiences that lead to deep reflection. These inner signs may go unnoticed by those who live on autopilot, but for those already in a state of spiritual awareness, they'll be like subtle nudges reminding them that something greater is about to happen. The visionaries are clear that these events should not be seen as arbitrary punishments, but as acts of mercy. It is heaven knocking on the door before it is too late. But they also warn that, for many, it will be difficult to discern the truth, because the noise of the world will try to drown out the true meaning of these events. This is why vigilance cannot be merely external. It is necessary to be attentive to the movements of the heart. This perspective completely changes the way we view the future. Instead of expecting something to explode overnight, we need to cultivate a sensitivity that perceives changes even at an early stage. After all, one of the biggest mistakes would be to think that the signs will be obvious to everyone. The truth is that many will see them, but few will understand them. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because by understanding these signs and events as part of a larger plan, we can realize that they are not just warnings to the world, but personal invitations to transformation. And, ultimately, perhaps the greatest change happens within us, even before it manifests itself around us. Right there, I'm on this journey too. Of all that has been said about Medjugorje, perhaps nothing arouses as much curiosity and anticipation as the so-called unrevealed messages. These 7 contents are kept absolutely secret, known only to a few of the visionaries and guarded with a care that borders on the sacred. It's not that they don't want to share, it's that, according to their accounts, there is a precise time, determined by Mary, for each of these messages to be revealed. And until that moment arrives, silence is part of the plan. The mere existence of hidden messages already changes the weight of the entire story. This is because we are not talking about personal notes or private reflections, but revelations that, according to the Seers, contain guidance and warnings that will affect the entire world. The mystery surrounding them creates an atmosphere of constant anticipation, while also raising inevitable questions. What could be so impactful that it needs to be kept hidden for decades? And why, exactly, can't we know now? The visionaries explain that the reason for this secrecy is not to create suspense, but to respect the divine process. Some of these messages concern future events that, if revealed at the wrong time, could provoke inappropriate reactions or even prevent people from living the present with the necessary intensity. It's as if heaven knew that certain truths require maturity to be received, and that the human heart must be prepared to endure them, and more than that, to act upon them. Some see this mystery as a kind of test. After all, it's not easy to trust something you can't see or prove. Waiting requires faith, patience, and an open mind to accept that not everything can be understood immediately. And perhaps this is one of the greatest lessons hidden behind the unrevealed messages. Transformation doesn't happen when we receive all the answers, but on the path we take while they wait. And here it's worth highlighting something few realize. The silence surrounding these 7 messages isn't a complete absence of information. Small clues are left over the years, subtle fragments in Mary's words and in the visionaries' testimonies, which allow us to glimpse the content without revealing it completely. It's as if God gives us enough glimpses of light to guide us, one step at a time, but never the entire map. This dynamic also has a powerful effect. It keeps spiritual vigilance alive. Knowing that something significant is coming makes us rethink our daily decisions, our relationships, and even how we use our time. And this, in itself, is preparation. Instead of passively waiting, we are invited to live as if each day were the EV of something great, not out of fear, but out of the awareness that nothing remains the same when the truth comes to light. It's interesting to note that, according to the Seers, when the right moment arrives, the revelations won't be mere words. There will be signs and events that confirm each one, and it will be impossible to ignore their impact. Until then, the invitation is for each of us to develop sufficient spiritual sensitivity to recognize the meaning behind what is still hidden. Because, when the curtain finally opens, those who have already cultivated this perception won't be caught off guard. They will be ready to act. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding why certain secrets are kept silent is also understanding how God works behind the scenes, shaping hearts and preparing minds before revealing the truth. Sometimes, the greatest revelation lies not in the content of the secret, but in the waiting process it forces us to endure. Comment there. That makes sense to me. when we talk about the messages of Medjugorje and everything that involves prophecies, signs, and secrets, it's easy to fall into the temptation of thinking that spiritual preparation is simply a matter of being informed, of knowing what will happen before it happens. But, according to the visionaries and Mary's own words, this vision is incomplete. Knowing is not enough. There's no point in knowing every detail of what's to come if our hearts remain distant from God, and our lives don't align with His purpose. This is why prayer and penance appear so insistently in the messages, not as mechanical rituals, but as living practices that shape our mindset and strengthen our souls for what's to come. Prayer, in this context, is not a hurried repetition of memorized words. It is a real dialogue, an opening of the heart to listen and be heard. Mary insists that sincere prayer creates a spiritual shield, capable of protecting against the influences that weaken faith. It is in this moment of intimacy with God that one finds the clarity to make right decisions and the strength to remain steadfast when everything around seems to be crumbling. It doesn't matter if it is done in a silent chapel, in a closed room, or during a solitary walk. What matters is that it is true, constant, and full of surrender. Penance, in turn, is often misunderstood. For many, the word carries the idea of punishment or pointless suffering. But, in a spiritual sense, it is a conscious choice to give up something as a means of inner purification and closer connection with God. It can be fasting, not only from food, but also from habits and behaviors that distance us from what is essential. It can be dedicating time and energy to helping someone, foregoing a momentary pleasure in favor of a greater good. Fasting, which is part of this spirit of penance, is also frequently mentioned in the messages. And here, it's not just a physical act, but an exercise in discipline and focus. By giving up something that comes naturally to us, like food, we learn to control our impulses and give more space to the spirit than to the body. It's training for the great inner battles, those that require not just willpower but profound surrender. Another element Mary emphasizes is reconciliation. It's impossible to prepare for times of trial while carrying hurt, resentment, and open wounds in your heart. Forgiveness, both received and offered, is a fundamental part of this journey. And that doesn't mean it's easy. It's often one of the most painful and challenging steps. But it's also one of the most liberating. When we reconcile, we're not just obeying a commandment, we're breaking invisible chains that kept us trapped in the past. These practices, prayer, penance, fasting, and reconciliation together form a kind of spiritual foundation. Without them, any intellectual preparation for the future becomes fragile, vulnerable to doubts and fears. But with them, the soul is strengthened, perception sharpens, and the courage to navigate the darkness increases. It's like preparing fertile soil. Even if a storm comes, the roots will be firm and the plant will survive. The most interesting thing is to realize how these concrete acts not only prepare us for what's to come, but are already beginning to transform our reality now. A life sustained by daily prayer becomes more balanced, more sensitive to others. A heart that practices penance learns to value what truly matters. A fasting soul understands the importance of self-control. And a person who lives reconciled spreads peace wherever they go. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding the role of prayer and penance isn't just about religious practices, but about how they reconfigure our inner selves, changing our relationship with God, our neighbors, and ourselves. It's about realizing that true preparation for any trial begins within, long before any external signs appear. Comment there. That makes sense to me. Over the years, it wasn't just the visionaries who experienced profound changes because of the apparitions and messages of Medjugorje. Thousands of people from different parts of the world share stories of transformation born from an encounter with this reality, some suddenly, others slowly and silently, but equally impactful. These testimonies reveal that, more than an extraordinary event, Medjugorje became a turning point in the lives of many. A remarkable case is that of an Italian woman who, according to her own account, arrived in Medjugorje driven more by curiosity than faith. She was experiencing a period of bitterness and spiritual distance, carrying old hurts and deep resentment against those close to her. During one of the masses, as she listened to the readings and prayed the rosary, she said she felt as if something broke inside her. It wasn't a miracle visible to others, but she describes how, in that moment, the weight she had carried for years simply fell away. She returned home with the decision to reconcile with all those she held a grudge against, and claims that this choice completely changed the course of her family life. Another testimony comes from a young man from France, involved in a lifestyle he describes as self-destructive. Alcohol, drugs, and fleeting relationships were part of his routine, and he saw no meaning in religion. He was taken to Medjugorje almost by force by a friend. There, during silent adoration, he says he felt a presence so strong that he couldn't hold back his tears. Days later, he decided to give up his addictions, seek help, and begin a journey of faith that continues to this day. It wasn't an easy process, but he says that without that moment, he would probably already be dead. there are also more discreet stories, which don't involve dramatic twists and turns, but rather changes in mindset that shape a person's entire future. A Brazilian businessman, accustomed to the fast-paced business world and the constant pursuit of material success, visited Medjugorje without great expectations. What impacted him wasn't an extraordinary event, but the simplicity of the people, the atmosphere of constant prayer, and the way life seemed to revolve around values completely opposite to those he held. He returned, determined to reevaluate his priorities, reduce his workload, and invest more time in his family and spiritual life. These examples show that transformation doesn't happen one way. For some, it's like a sudden light that illuminates everything at once. For others, it's an ember that starts small, but grows into a living fire. And in all cases, there's one thing in common. The Medjugorje experience isn't just about seeing or hearing something, but about allowing yourself to be touched, and, from there, making concrete decisions that change the course of your journey. That's interesting to note that these changes aren't limited to the personal lives of those experiencing them. Often, they spread like waves, reaching families, friends, and even entire communities. One reconciliation inspires another. A restored life makes room for others to be restored as well. It's the multiplier effect of true transformation that isn't limited to fleeting feelings, but translates into lasting actions. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding these stories means understanding that spiritual transformation isn't the privilege of those who experience extraordinary mystical experiences. It's within reach of anyone who allows themselves to listen, reflect, and act. Sometimes, change begins precisely when we decide to take a small step in the right direction, even if we don't yet have all the answers. Right there, I'm on this journey too. Maintaining faith in times of darkness is a challenge that, for many, seems nearly impossible. When circumstances close in on us, when answers are unavailable, and when all we see is uncertainty, the temptation to give up becomes very real. But it is precisely in these moments that faith ceases to be just a pretty idea and becomes an active decision, a conscious choice that requires courage and perseverance. According to the messages of Medjugorje, this perseverance is not the result of blind effort, but of simple attitudes, rooted in practices that strengthen the spirit day after day. One of the most frequently repeated guidelines is constancy in prayer, not the kind of prayer offered only when we have time or when despair strikes, but the kind that becomes a natural part of life, like breathing. Praying every day, even on days when we don't feel like it, is like keeping a lamp lit in the darkness. The light may seem small compared to the vastness of the night, but it prevents the darkness from becoming total. This discipline creates a solid foundation that prevents faith from being driven solely by the motions of the moment. Another essential point is to nourish the mind with truth. In times of crisis, it's easy to become consumed by news, commentary, and predictions that increase fear and insecurity. Mary invites us to seek God's word, meditate on it, and allow it to be the voice that guides our decisions, not the noise of the world. Feeding on truth is like recalibrating our internal compass so it continues to point north, even when the path is obscured by fog. The practice of gratitude also occupies a central place. It may seem contradictory to be thankful when things are going badly, but it is precisely this attitude that changes perspective. Gratitude shifts the focus from what is missing to what we still have, and this opens space for hope. Small gestures, like writing down 3 things you are grateful for every day, can transform your mindset and keep your heart steadfast. Another valuable piece of advice is to cultivate fellowship with people who share the same faith and purpose. No one navigates darkness with the same strength alone. Having someone to pray with, talk to, and even cry with strengthens and renews our spirit. It is in this environment that words of encouragement, practical support, and constant reminders emerge that we are not walking alone. It's also important to act consistently with what you believe, even when no one is watching. Small daily decisions, like maintaining honesty, practicing generosity, and choosing forgiveness, build character, capable of withstanding pressure. They're like invisible roots that, in times of storm, prevent the tree from being uprooted. And finally, learning to rest in God. This is perhaps the hardest part, because it means relinquishing control and trusting fully. Resting isn't about giving up, but accepting that there's a time for everything, that life has cycles, and that not everything is in our hands. This surrender doesn't eliminate challenges, but it changes the way we face them. The path to maintaining faith in the midst of darkness is not paved with grand heroic gestures, but with constancy in the small things. These are actions that seem simple, but when repeated day after day, they create a resilience that no storm can destroy. And when the light begins to return, it will be precisely this silent fidelity that will have sustained the soul. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because understanding how to stand firm is just the first step. The next is figuring out how to transform this period of darkness into a time of such intense spiritual growth that when we look back, we can say that it was there that we became stronger and closer to God. Comment there. That makes sense to me. What many people don't realize is that, although the messages of Medjugorje speak of future events and signs yet to come, the essence of this call is deeply tainted. It's not a message to be filed away in memory, hoping that one day, when things start to happen, it will be time to act. It's a wake-up call for now, for this moment, for this day. True preparation doesn't begin at the first visible sign, but in the daily routine, in the small choices we silently accumulate, which, together, define the direction of our journey. Mary doesn't just speak of catastrophic events or drastic changes. In the world, she speaks of personal conversion, of a transformation of mindset, of leaving behind what holds us back and embracing what brings us closer to God. And this kind of change cannot be postponed. Waiting to begin is like seeing a storm brewing on the horizon and deciding to reinforce the house only when the first tiles are already flying. The urgency lies not only in what will come, but in the fact that the time we have is uncertain. This urgent call also reveals a hidden truth that isn't always comfortable to face. The greatest battle isn't against what's outside, but against what's happening within us. It's in the now that we deal with our distractions, with the tendency to put off important decisions, with the inner voice that convinces us that it's not the right time yet. But the reality is that if we don't start today, when the time comes, we may not be ready. And here comes something profound. Spiritual preparation is not something that can be built in haste. Just as a tree needs years to grow roots strong enough to withstand strong winds, we too need time to cultivate virtues, strengthen our faith, and learn to discern what is true. Every prayer said today, every act of love, every renunciation of something that separates us from God, is another root planted in the ground. The present is also the place where small decisions become irreversible changes. Forgiveness today can restore a relationship that will be crucial to sustaining us in the future. A prayer habit started now can become the foundation of our spiritual resilience in difficult times. A choice of integrity made now can be what keeps us strong when we are tested. This is why the message is so insistent. Don't wait for tomorrow to force you to do what you can. Start now. And what's more, living this calling in the present doesn't mean living in constant fear of what's to come. On the contrary, it means living with purpose, with the clarity that each day is a unique opportunity to take a step in the right direction. It means putting into practice now everything we know to be right, even if we don't yet understand all the reasons behind it. It's, in a way, choosing to be part of the answer before even knowing the whole question. When we look at life this way, we realize that the future won't just be something that happens to us, but something we ourselves help to forge. And this completely changes the way we approach the present. Instead of passively waiting, we begin to live actively, aware that every act, every word, every decision is a seed sown in the soil of tomorrow. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding the urgency of the present also means realizing that if we don't embrace this call today, we risk becoming accustomed to indifference, which is one of the greatest enemies of true transformation. It is in the now that history begins to change, and this change begins within each of us. Right there. This makes sense to me. When we consider all that has been said, it becomes clear that Mary's messages do not carry the weight of a discourse, nor the threatening tone of someone seeking to paralyze. On the contrary, what they offer is a path that crosses the darkness, not by running away from it, but by bringing light, that looks to the future, not as an inevitable and bleak destiny, but as an opportunity for transformation, conscious choices, and a reconnection with what truly matters. Mary does not come to accuse or condemn, but to prepare and love. Every word, every silence, every instruction is a gesture of care, like that of a mother who, seeing a storm approaching, does not panic, but hurries to guide her children to a safe place. And in this shelter, there is room for everyone. One is excluded. All you need is to want to enter. Just accept the invitation. The heart of this message is simple. It's not about surviving what's to come. It's about living purposefully now, so that when tomorrow comes, we'll be ready, steadfast, and at peace. It's about understanding that preparation begins in small acts and silent prayer, in forgiveness given without being asked, in renouncing what doesn't edify, in choosing to remain faithful even when it would be easier to give in. Whatever your story, the starting point can be today. And perhaps this is the great revelation behind it all, that the change that will transform the world begins within each of us. Deep within, in the place where only God sees. It is there that the true battle is won, and it is from there that the strength to enlighten others springs. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the preparation and love we speak of are not abstract concepts. They have faces, they have gestures, they have real consequences for how we live and relate to one another. And, if we allow them, they can lead us to a level of spiritual life that transforms not only our own path, but also that of everyone who crosses our path. And there, I want to wake up. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this message resonated with you in a special way. So, take this opportunity and subscribe to the channel to continue walking with me on this journey here. Each new piece of content is designed to strengthen faith and bring greater clarity to topics that touch our hearts. Also, leave a comment with the phrase, "I'm with you until the end." So I know you were there until the very end and that this reflection resonated with you. And if you felt this connection, leave a like. It really helps keep the exchange we built throughout the video alive. Now, so as not to break this flow, there is already a video here that complements this subject and will take you even deeper into this reflection. Click and continue with me there.